Everything in your life fits inside a quaternity. So in this video, I'm going to teach you what a quaternity actually is, how your mind develops quaternities. Then I'm going to go through one real quaternity example so you really get the concept and you actually understand it at a deeper level. Then we're going to go through how quaternities actually show you shadow projection. I'm going to go through an example of shadow projection and what that is and how it affects your life. And then lastly, I'm going to show you how you can use quaternities to make impossible decisions. And if you're curious about what a quaternity actually is and why you should care, this right here is an example of one. And that circle represents your mind. When you're looking at this, what you're actually looking at is your own mind. So I'm going to break down exactly what these different parts of the quaternity are, which is basically saying what different parts of your mind you're looking at and exactly how you can use this knowledge to make some impossible decisions. These kind of decisions are where both paths might be really bad. Like you have two choices that neither of them are really good. Okay, let's jump right into part one, how your mind develops quaternities. Okay, so right now in your life, you're at some point on this diagram. You know, you're probably somewhere around here. You're an adult and you've got an idea of the world. From the day you're born, your mind is tiny and it's undeveloped. You haven't associated positive or negative qualities to any parts of your environment. You haven't differentiated the outside world, the inner world, or the social world. And then as you grow up, your mind expands and you begin to stabilize your personality. You understand what you are, how you are different to the outside world, how you are separate and different to other people. And that's what's happening over the course of your life. You're integrating new things and your mind gets bigger. Your personality expands and gets bigger. So right now you're probably at this stage of life and your mind is developed to some level. So what I'm going to explain in this part of the video is how your mind develops quaternities. When you're born into some kind of society. Now, whether it's your parents or grandparent, or somebody else like an auntie or uncle, or there's somebody who is dictating or taking care of you. You're a tiny dependent. You're not in control of your own life. You can't take care of yourself. You can't do anything. You're just this tiny organism and you're looking up and there's these giants that are feeding you or maybe not feeding you, or you're dependent on them. And so whoever these people who are taking care of you are, these giants who rule your world at this time in your life, they're the ones who pass on their values and give you an understanding of the world that they have themselves. So yeah, this represents their minds and they're going to give you what's in their minds, essentially. They're going to like impress that upon you. You know, when you're young, this represents your mind. You might tell a lie and they might tell you, you know, they might get angry at you. They might hit you, tell you to stand in the corner, some kind of punishment. And what that does is that associates a negative value to that content in your mind. So this is the negative, this is the positive, and you're gonna put lying in the negative. And you're gonna put probably the opposite of that is telling the truth. So you're gonna put telling the truth in the positive and lying in the negative. And then what you're going to do is you're going to associate one of these qualities with yourself. So you don't want to be a liar, you want to be honest. And so this is, let's just say this is you. The term in psychology that denotes you is the ego. So that's you. And you want to be honest and you don't want to be a liar. So you're going to associate the quality of honesty or telling the truth to yourself and also to the people who are taking care of you. This positive quality is something that they see in themselves. And when you're a child, as you're developing your mind, you're going to associate that positive quality with yourself. You don't automatically or normally associate negative qualities from the society you're brought up in to yourself as you're growing up. That's the other. That's what goes into what's called the shadow. So this quality here and this quadrant opposite to the ego is what's going to be the shadow. Okay, so over the course of your life, there's constantly just going to be qualities which are connected to you and qualities which are like pushed away from you. You don't want a part of those qualities. Examples in today's society, probably in your mind right now, killing is bad. So then I'm not a killer. Any kind of criminal activity, stealing, he's a thief. I'm not a thief. He's evil, I'm good. Positive qualities are generally connected to the ego and negative qualities are pushed away into the shadow. So over the course of your life, you're going to develop these positive and negative qualities. So your mind is going to develop this very complex set of quaternities, which are essentially going to make up your entire understanding of reality. There could be things like hardworking or lazy, you know, clean and dirty. There's just millions, basically infinite quaternities in your mind which are developing over the course of your life. Whatever you think is a positive thing, you're going to try and associate to yourself, and whatever you think is negative is going to be projected onto somebody else. So we'll go through that in part 2 and part 3 in the shadow projection parts. You're going to have thousands and thousands and thousands of these quaternities that build up in your mind over the course of your life, and they're basically going to be impressed upon you by the powerful individuals in whatever society you grow up in, whatever environment that you grow up in. Whatever's in their mind, they're going to impress upon you, and that's going to affect the quaternities that develop in your mind. Okay, so that's how quaternities develop over the course of your life. Let's jump into part 2. Okay, part 2 is a real quaternity example. So in this example, we're going to look at a woman who has a baby, and let's just imagine that this is set in a city 200 years ago, and the woman is basically starving. She has no food, and she has a baby, and she has 2 options. She's faced with 2 terrible options. And you know, in everyone's life, you're always going to come into what's called conflicts of duty. So she's faced with 2 terrible options. She either steals some food in order to give herself and her baby sustenance and survive, or she doesn't steal, in which case her baby and her could potentially die. So they're 2 horrible options, and this is causing her to be neurotic because she doesn't know what the right option is, but also it's a moral conflict. If she steals, she has to do something evil, which she thought she would never do. She doesn't think she's a thief. She's always been a law-abiding good person, and she might have different beliefs about what happens if she becomes a bad person, or even just beyond that, they might be terrible laws where they cut the hands off of thieves, or you get imprisoned or punished, or some kind of negative thing on the pathway to death is what happens to you is what she thinks is going to happen to her if she does this evil thing. And if she's good and if she thinks she's going to stay a good person, then she won't steal, but then it's going to result in a terrible thing happening, her baby and her starving to death. So in your life, you're always going to come across conflicts of duty as you grow up. There's going to be situations where you happen into some problem, and no matter which decision you make, there's going to be some kind of evil or bad thing that's going to have to happen. You might be forced to leave your family if you want to pursue something that you want to pursue, like they won't help you. But then if you don't leave your family, you're going to have to sacrifice this dream or this idea that you had for your life. Okay, so let's just jump right into this example. So the quaternity she has here, okay, it's steal, don't steal. And then how we find the other 2 sides of the quaternity, we just use a simple language trick. Okay, so this is the negative, and this is the positive. Now, if we want to find the other 2 sides of the quaternity, we just use a simple language method called the if-then method. I won't go into exactly how to use it right now, but essentially what we're going to do is just go, if she doesn't steal, then she's a good person. So what we're looking for is like the moral value to her, and the opposite of good is going to be evil. So what we're looking at now is we're looking at this woman's mind. This quaternity is literally happening inside her mind right now. She's sitting there and she has these 2 choices. She doesn't know what to do. And no matter what choice she makes, she's in a predicament. She's in a bad situation. So this is exactly what we're looking at now, is literally her mind. So if she doesn't steal, she will still be a good person. She's going to be able to stay as she is now. But now this is where we use more language techniques to uncover quaternities. But her baby's going to die. She's going to die. Or, if she does steal, then she becomes an evil person, but something good happens out of it, her baby's going to survive. She's going to survive. So now she has to make this decision, but her understanding of reality, all the quaternities in her mind up until this point, have not allowed her to see another path. So what's happened is these two parts of reality, right now in her mind, they don't exist. This is impossible, right? It's impossible. It's impossible for her to steal and be good, or it be good that she steals, or her to stay a good person if she steals. And it's impossible for her to not steal and be evil. Like if she doesn't steal in this situation, why would she be evil? Like she's good. So this is where her mind is. We'll just draw, that's the ego, and this is the shadow. Okay, so the shadow is the qualities that she doesn't think belong to her, right? So she's not a thief, she's not going to steal, and she's not evil. This is where her mind currently is. This is the situation of her mind. She's good and she doesn't steal. And what these are, these 2 things, these are paired opposites. So They go together. If she thinks about someone who's good, they don't steal. And if she thinks about someone who's evil, they steal. If she thinks about someone who steals, they're evil. If she thinks about someone who doesn't steal, they're good. These are paired opposites in the mind, and they're passed down, like I talked about in part 1, they're passed down from whatever society you're brought up in, and mainly from the parents. Her parents would have said to her, don't steal. Hit her if she stole. Okay, and if she's good, if she doesn't steal, she does the right thing, she's rewarded. She's gonna get a snack, or she's gonna get a hug, or a kiss, or whatever, some kind of positive thing. So this quaternity is built up in her mind over the time she grows up. Something that makes it clear is if you imagine that she was brought up in a society where stealing was good and everybody stole, then there would be a positive association to stealing or whatever that action is in her mind. And if the opposite was true, like people who don't steal are punished or they're perceived as evil, then the whole quaternity is flipped in her mind and it's a completely different situation. So anyway, with this example continued, she's now in a situation where it's impossible for her to be a good person and steal, and it's impossible for her to be evil and not steal. So she wants to go in this direction, right? Her mind wants to go in this way as far as possible. She doesn't want to steal, she wants to be a good person. And the deeper part of this is morally what happens if she's a bad person herself. The law is one thing, but also, she may have beliefs that she'll go to hell or something like that if she's evil or does something evil, and she'll go to heaven if she's good. Those kind of ideas are actually mostly more powerful than the law or some kind of outside force, but they're both powerful. Anyway, so how does she make this decision? How can she possibly make this impossible decision? She needs to integrate her shadow. This part of her mind, which she hasn't discovered yet, which is still outside, it's not part of her. She sees it in other people. That's the shadow. And the only way for her to not be neurotic and see the new path is to integrate this part of her mind. Right now, her conscious mind is basically just this part here. These don't exist, and this exists, but it's outside her. The way for her to see another path forward is to see these two things. So all she needs to do basically is to see these two things. Now this is extremely difficult. It seems like an easy thing, but shadow integration is probably one of the most difficult things anybody can do, and that's why nobody does it. And it's kind of hard to see it until you do shadow integration over your life and you kind of gain wisdom. It's hard to see how doing something bad results in something good, and doing something good results in something bad. It's kind of difficult to see that because of the way your mind has built up all these quaternities over time, but it is the truth. So anyway, what she needs to do is integrate this quality of stealing. If she sees the positive side of stealing and the negative side of not stealing, and she accepts it, because that is the situation. In her exact situation right now, she's in a situation where not stealing is evil because she's going to allow herself and her baby to die, and that's here. So that's the impossible situation that she can't see. This is where she is now. Or it reflects an aspect of reality that she doesn't want to accept. And the other side of it is that if she steals, it's good. She's doing a good thing. She's a good person. There's a positive thing that's happening out of her doing something which she thought was negative. So what happens when you integrate a quaternity is you reach neutrality, okay? Because you're seeing reality for what it really is. If this is the woman, the reason she's having such a hard time making this decision is because she's actually separated. Right now, she's actually separated from reality. She thinks she's seeing the situation, but she's seeing this like reflective panel of her own mind. She can't see what's on the other side, right? She can't see this and this. So she can't see that stealing is good. And not only that, it's that she doesn't want to accept the truth, which is that the quaternity in her mind kind of doesn't exist. What she believes to be true isn't completely true. There's parts missing. And so what happens is you realize the negative qualities in the positive and the positive qualities in the negative. Now she's seeing reality for what it is. Stealing isn't bad, and not stealing isn't good. And also the opposite of that is also true, right? It's a bit confusing, but this is how to understand reality and not be neurotic. If she saw this situation, she would just be so much more neutral. Like her situation's bad, but she can see a way through it. That doesn't completely throw her under the bus in terms of her personal morality. So this is an example of a quaternity, and there's a million different variations of quaternities in your mind and in everyone else's mind. And these are how they make decisions every single day and how they understand other people. So anyway, what we're going to go to now is a basic example of shadow projection. And I'll explain to you how essentially what happens is before she's forced to steal, she sees the quality of being, let's just say, evil or a thief or stealing in other people and not in herself. And that's why she So basically in her mind, there's going to be this kind of clean cut of outside her in other people. There's either like evil people and thieves, or there's good people who aren't thieves. And that's kind of the split that everyone has in their mind. And it's extremely, like I said, it's extremely difficult to integrate these negative qualities which already exist in you and then make decisions based on them. And also the opposite, right? It's not just that this is evil and this is good. It's that literally being good is evil and not stealing is evil. There's an aspect of reality that reflects that truth, you know, and it's extremely difficult to see, right? It's impossible for her, where being good is actually evil or stealing is actually good. That's an example of real quaternity. Let's move into part 3, which is explaining this shadow projection aspect. So this right here is the shadow projection. This is the mind of the woman from the previous example. And here we have the poor soul who is being projected upon. Okay, so what we're looking at right here is in the top half, this is the conscious mind of the woman, and this is the unconscious mind. So basically in every single person's mind, there are two parts. There is the conscious mind and the unconscious mind. And this is the ego, and it's basically you in your mind. So right now you're sitting here watching this video and you're inside your conscious mind. Your unconscious mind is everything that you're not aware of and that you can't access while you're awake in your conscious mind. And the ego represents you. So if you close your eyes and you imagine yourself, that's you inside your mind. You know, if I say, where are you? You're not going to say you're in your hand. You're not going to say you're in your leg. You're probably going to say you're in your head. And what you mean is you're in your mind. So that's what we call the ego. And like we said before, everybody wants to everybody kind of automatically associates the qualities to themselves, which are positive, right? You don't want to associate bad or negative qualities to yourself. And those are what we call inferior qualities. And so that's why I've put a positive here and a negative here, because all those negative qualities that we don't want to be associated to, that we've been taught are bad, are generally pushed into the unconscious, or they are in the unconscious. So what happens in this specific example is that the woman is currently her conscious situation, is that she's a good person and she's not a thief. She's not a bad person. She's not evil. But she's forced to make a decision where if she wants to survive, she has to incorporate or integrate this negative quality. So let's look at what her mind is before and after she integrates the quality. So right now she's sitting there with her baby, and in her mind the world is separated into thieves and good people. There's her friends, her family, there's everybody she knows, and they're all good people like her who are not thieves. They've never stolen anything in their life. They've never stolen anything in their life. And then out in the world, there's a whole bunch of these bad people who are thieves, right? Like this is kind of the perception. And what's happening is this quality, because it's unconscious, it's projected out into the world because she doesn't associate it to her. She wants to push it away from her as far as possible. And so now we look at this example. Let's just say there's a man out in the world, his name's Jeffrey, and he stole something before, and this woman knows about it. Now when she sees Jeffrey, okay, what she's gonna see, let's just say they've barely spoken, she knows nothing about Jeffrey except that he stole something one time and he's a thief. She's not gonna see Jeffrey. Okay, so when she looks at Jeffrey, what's going to happen is the quality of thief and evil is going to be projected onto him because it's unconscious in herself. And when she looks at him, he is a part of reality that fits that projection. And so it's automatically projected onto it. Now, this is happening without her awareness. You know, she just thinks she's seeing a thief. She might have seen him in handcuffs on the news or something like that, right? And that image is imprinted in her mind. And so Jeffrey is just existing. He's a total human being. He's the same as her, right? He has an unconscious and a conscious mind. He's a person, he's a human being. He's got a whole personality and he's exceptionally complex, and he's neither good nor bad, or in reality, he's both good and bad. But when she looks at him, she doesn't see a person, an individual, a whole human being. She sees this negative quality in herself. She's going to project that negative quality of the thief onto Jeffrey. And so she's separated from reality by this projection. She can't see Jeffrey as an individual, a person, as just neutral, right? She's immediately kind of hostile towards him because she sees this. She sees the bad that she doesn't see in herself. And so that's separating her from reality. And that's basically an example of shadow projection. So that's what her mind looks like. This is what her mind is looking like before she's been forced to steal herself. Now, after she does the evil deed and actually steals, let's just say, a piece of bread, what happens is this quality of thief is brought into consciousness. So that is called a transcendent function, where something from your unconscious mind is brought into your conscious mind. And what it does is it increases the size of your conscious mind. So it expands your conscious mind and expands your personality. Because now what happens is this projection is gone. Okay. And the woman can see the qualities of positive and negative in both herself and in Jeffrey. She knows that Jeffrey is a thief and a good person. It's not so simple and clean cut as just, there's thieves and good people in the world. Now she can see the duality of reality, right? The two sides of reality which exist in every human being, including herself. Now her friends, she can see that they're also thieves. And she can see the positive in Jeffrey, that not only is he a thief, an evil person, right? He's also a good person. It's not so simple as just this clean cut, I'm a good person and he's a thief. And that's how she makes all her decisions and understands reality. So that's what always happens when you're faced with conflicts of duty in your life, those impossible decisions. One's good, one's bad. Maybe they're both bad, right? In the case of her example, both of them result in negative things. So what happens is when you integrate your shadow, these decisions that before seemed impossible now become possible, or you can make them without being so neurotic, because it doesn't mean like sacrificing this part of yourself. Now if she's in this situation, this psychological situation with that same choice, she doesn't need to completely sacrifice her understanding of herself and reality in order to make one of the decisions. One of the decisions doesn't result in her becoming an evil person and everything she hates about the world. Now she can kind of see, okay, I'm a human being, and every human being has negative and positive qualities, inferior and superior qualities. And there's this dual side of nature and reality that I've, if I just accept, then it's the truth. It's not about really forcing an idea in your mind that isn't true. What it is actually just acknowledging an aspect of reality, of truth that you just couldn't see before. So anyway, let's move on to part 4, which is how to make these impossible decisions. Okay, part 4 is how to make these impossible decisions. Okay, so the first way to actually make impossible decisions when you're faced with a conflict of duty in your life, basically 2 terrible options, is to expand your personality. So, when we looked at that diagram before of the baby across to the old person, if you come and talk to someone really old about this problem you're facing in your life, they might laugh at you, or they might kind of think to themselves, this is such a quandary, this is such a terrible, horrible, most difficult decision for you. But for them, it's something they've seen 100 times before. Making some decision that makes you an evil person, or, not making that decision and remaining a good person. If they're conscious, if their personality and their conscious mind has expanded to incorporate both of those sides of reality already, to them it won't seem as difficult a decision. They're just going to look at it and be neutral about it. And so you can do the same too. Go out and do things and, expand your personality by seeing the negative qualities in yourself that you don't want to associate with yourself, and see the positive qualities in other people that you may not be able to see in them because of shadow projection. So for example, you might meet somebody who you think is evil, but then you realize that they're actually just a human being like you, and that makes you more conscious. Because what happens normally with shadow projection is that it makes it good to destroy or harm or kill whatever fits your projection. So if you imagine in wartime, the enemy is not perceived as a human being. You don't see Jim and Josh and Jake and Jeffrey and Bill. You just see enemy. You're not seeing individual human beings, and that separates you from reality and affects your decision making, and it makes you unconscious and also neurotic. One of the biggest things that you see in war is people who have PTSD because they can't accept that they are evil, that they did kill, what they did was evil, or that they are good for killing, or that it was evil not to kill. There's just different neuroses of different individual people, but one of the biggest ones is just not being able to accept the evil in yourself. Because when you go through life, when you realize that the enemy were just people, which means they're good and evil, then the only way to realize that is to accept the evil in yourself. And sometimes it can be so difficult to accept the evil in yourself that, it drives you basically insane. keeps it just, the split in your mind can't be healed. And that's why people have those, problems in their mind. I won't go into that in this video. So the first way to make these impossible decisions is to expand that personality. Accept these negative qualities about yourself, which you see outside. And by doing that, you're going to increase the stability of your mind, and your personality will expand to incorporate these qualities, which you don't see in yourself previously. As you can see here, your mind gets smaller, and if you make it bigger and more stable, that's one way to make impossible decisions much more easily. But the next thing for you to make impossible decisions is to accept both the divine and corporeal elements of yourself and your own mind and your own existence. So there is a part of you which is corporeal, right? Your body, your instincts, all these things which are kind of like earthly. They tie you down to the earth. And then there's the divine part of you, which is like what you imagine is God and good and all the positive qualities of yourself. See and accept the divine and corporeal aspects of yourself. Reality in the psyche is kind of split into divine and good and corporeal and bad. When you look out in the world, what you see is the ground and your body. And then you look up and you see the sky and light, and there's this kind of split in reality that you can see. You can see things go from kind of like intangible or psyche all the way down to tangible and matter. And part of that is the corporeal elements of yourself. So your body, your organs, everything that's kind of makes you an animal, the animal side of your existence. And then there's the psyche, which is like the divine side of your existence. So the entirety of reality is split into these two aspects. And generally you're associating positive to the divine and negative to the corporeal. Right? You don't see the fact that you're an ape, literally an animal walking around in reality, as a good thing and something that you normally accept or come to terms with. But you do see your soul and your mind and I guess intelligence and consciousness as a good thing. And that's kind of what you want to aspire to. You don't aspire to be an ape, and you don't want to not be conscious and divine. So accepting both of these are true, so your mind is more whole, then that will help you to make these impossible decisions, because it won't be such a sacrifice of your identity in order to make those hard decisions. And lastly, this is probably the most important one, and it happens in all of these are basically happening at the same time when you integrate unconscious contents. So accepting the truth. I love this statement called at bottom, because in my mind it helps me to kind of see what's really going on. It can be confusing in your mind to see the truth and to find out what's really going on. As we looked in that example before of the shadow projection, you might be looking at somebody, but how do you know what you're really looking at if you're unconscious, which means you have no awareness of a projection that is being put onto them? It's very difficult when you get this understanding of psychology to really figure out what is true, but this kind of diagram here helps you to make sense of it. So just ask yourself the question, what is the situation? What's really going on? If this woman who's faced with this impossible decision of stealing and feeding her baby or not stealing and letting her baby die, if she could see what the truth was, if she could snap her fingers and just see every aspect of the situation and just see it clearly, not only the situation but herself, if she could see everything, then she's kind of looking at the situation. She's standing at bottom. The ground beneath her feet is solid, and she knows where she is. She knows what's going on. She knows what the situation is. If you can see the situation and you're at bottom, you're standing here, then that's where you want to be when you're making those impossible decisions. You don't want to be in a state where you're like this, where you're standing on quicksand. You don't know what the situation is. You don't know who you are, what you are. It's a confusing and difficult place to be. And you're here because there's this split in your mind, because of the quaternity of positive and negative qualities that you see in yourself, and which are then going to dictate what you see in reality outside you. So if you want to make these impossible decisions in your life, try to be standing at bottom. Okay, that's the end of the video. If you like this video, just click the subscribe button. I'll be putting out new videos every single day. And if you're interested in learning your mind's 4 functions and mastering them, I've created a course called the 7-Day Decision Maker, and the link to that is in the description and the pinned comments. So thanks for watching. I'll see you in tomorrow's video.